30 years ago when I was starting out, I was like, I'm a kid that went to prep school. I was auditioning for Gangbanger number 3, Gangbanger number 2, and I was like, I'm gonna get Gangbanger number 1. I swear to God, and that was my dream. And dreams can evolve. Let's just say that.
I am Perri Nemiroff with Collider, and it is the ultimate treat to be here moderating this conversation for you with the star of A Million Miles Away. Please join me in welcoming Michael Peña.
How are you guys? Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thanks for sticking around. It's nice to see my fellow actors.
I've been lucky enough to be in this room and sit on this stage a lot. That was one of the best welcomes I've ever seen doing this.
All right, I'll pay you guys.
Very, very well deserved. All right, brace yourself for my first question here.
I have a question. Is everybody here an actor? Yeah. Oh, cool. Not you. Okay. He said, okay.
I have a thing for compound questions. This is officially the longest compound question I'll ever ask because it's a 5-parter. I'm gonna break it up. Wait for this, because I'm using the movie to ask you questions about becoming an actor in this industry based on the ingredients.
Is it multiple choice?
No.
Okay.
Ingredient 1 is finding your goal. So do you remember the first time you said to yourself, I have to be an actor, and what it was that sparked that dream?
Well, I was working at the Board of Trade. I think I started there at 17. I was one of these kids taking calculus, and I wanted to be, in finance, and because I thought math was fun. And I this is kind of a messed up story, but I was working at the Board of Trade, and all those guys were high on cocaine. Like, it was like 30 years ago, but they thought that nobody could notice. And so I would go home and imitate those guys to my best friend's mom, and things like this. He's like, "Hey, how was your weekend?" I was like, he's not playing. Like, people can tell that this guy's high. And she says, "You're good at imitating people. Why don't you try acting?" And where I grew up like in the hood, I guess you could say. There were no actors, no acting programs, so I thought, like, that's weird. And she forced me to go to an open call, and she says, "Just do your imitation stuff." And she was right. Obviously, I went to an open call for Sidney Poitier's To Serve With Love Part 2. It was a TV movie of the week. And I got a bunch of callbacks and stuff, and I didn't get the part. I was a featured extra. Then I came to LA, and I was like, that was the only thing on my resume, and I thought I'd made it. And then I found out that I didn't make it. And then I basically, I fell in love with it just doing acting class, because there was like 15 years that I didn't work. It was a long time, and my parents were begging me to come home. And I just fell in love with story, and I fell in love with telling the story and being part of it. And I don't know if I was going to be a gaffer, or I don't know what was going to happen. I just wanted to be a part of it,
Very much understand that. All right, to build on a little, ingredient 2, knowing how far you are. And I'll spin this one this way. So when you first identified the dream to become an actor, at the time, early days, what did you think was step 1 to making that happen? And now, having done it, would you recommend that step to an aspiring actor out there, or did you find something that was more effective along the way?
Oh my gosh.
I like this audience.
No, this is a good audience. It's a good question. So you basically had 5 questions and 3 questions within one question.
Yes, I told you I'm very good at that.
No, you're good. Nobody's arguing that. What was the synopsis of the question?
What you thought step 1 to becoming an actor was,
okay.
And if you liked that first step or found a different one.
Well, here's what I did. I don't know if this is step 1, but I didn't have a lot of money, right? And so I was bussing tables. And what I would make sure that I did is, and I got this from sports. I was a wrestler in high school, and I was not a great wrestler. So I ended up watching college wrestlers and Olympic wrestlers to see how they move. And I was like, wow, they moved way differently than high school wrestlers. So I started implementing some of the moves that I could possibly do. And then I was lucky. I went downstate a couple times, took 6th place, but my freshman year I was like 1-12. I lost 12 and won once. So I did the same thing with acting. I'm going to study the greats. I'm going to watch 2 movies a day, and I did that for about 7 years. And I rewatched the one movie that I just kept watching over and over. Was Streetcar Named Desire, Marlon Brando. And I could see that he would look at his mark and step to it. He didn't care. But it was filled with so much behavior. Like you can actually mute it and tell what was going on. And Vivian Lee was freaking amazing. You could tell that she was delusional and she was like out there, and it was just a remarkable movie. And I didn't know the magic. I didn't know what were these people doing. And so one of them was it was a blessing that I saw that movie, because one of them was like an English actress, very classically trained, and then Marlon Brando, very American, and they were both really effective. So I'm like, I want to learn both and see what works, and then you find your way. But you want to, like I said, you want to be a storyteller. Like you are an actor, but you want to be a storyteller.
Always top priority. I get that. All right. Ingredient 3, draw a roadmap. And this question that I have here is kind of inspired by the moment when he opts to not mail in his application, but rather show up in person. Can you name a time in your career when you took an unconventional path, either to prepare for a role or maybe even to get one?
Yeah. So what I did, because there was a silver lining. Like, 30 years ago when I was starting out, I was like, I'm the kid that went to prep school. I was auditioning for Gangbanger number 3, Gangbanger number 2, and I was like, I'm gonna get Gangbanger number 1. I swear to God, and that was my dream. And dreams can evolve. Let's just say that. And so, what I would do is I got Michael Shurtleff's book on audition, right, which is fantastic. It's so great to have that viewpoint, because you think, when you go to an audition, you're like, they don't like me, or find different reasons to complain, which are super valid. But then if you take the viewpoint of a casting director, they want to discover someone. They want you to be, please, help me do my job. The producers want to find someone. I was like, oh, wow. And it's so easy to take the next perspective. And so I definitely studied that book. And then I got Sanford Meisner's on acting. And what I did, which I don't recommend, but because I was getting so many auditions for gangsters, I would do one chapter for a month. And the feedback a couple of times was like, he's good. He's just not very conventional. He's a little weird. Because I would do the repeat exercise too much. You know what I mean? And I was like doing like animal work and imaginate this and that. And it's like, dude, all you got to say is give me your money. And I was like, dude, like, I don't know. But screw it, whatever, who cares? I was like, and it was the naiveness but like that was completely unconventional. I would do a book, and then I got like, I think Ivana Chapek's was it Stella Adler's book, and I would try and then just see what worked for me. Like, I don't know, I was just doing anything that I could just to act.
All right, ingredient 4. If you don't know how, learn. What is a new skill that you've picked up through a role, or perhaps a new acting technique you've tried recently?
Acting is amazing for that. Like now I do love learning. In this particular movie, what happened was I had to do some underwater scenes. I don't know if you remember, but I'm like, I was under upside down. You have to let the water go up your nose in order because eventually it does get in there, right? And then you hold it in the cavity. It was so much fun. And so we did that for days. And so like and they're like, here we go. And I'm like, just do it quick. And then you get like a sinus infection or whatever. But then I was able to, swim upside down and not worried about it too much. And obviously these are, pretty intense glasses, but I learned how to swim upside down and let water in my nose. So I got that. And I learned about beryllium detectors and the heat sensitivity to lasers.
Now, because I'm curious, what is the key to being able to do that with water going up your nose? You're
supposed to just open the cavity up, and just like you can practice in the tub. It's not fun, and literally you hear blue, 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 and you don't sneeze it out because it'll come out your eyes, which I did. Yeah, I don't know if you could see it, but there's one where I'm totally fine, and then the next I look totally hungover, and it's like that was it.
I feel like my eyes are starting to tear.
Yeah, so sorry, guys. Let's talk about acting.
Neti pots. All right, ingredient number 5, and I'm going to use this one to lean hard into the movie specifically now. When you think you've made it, you probably have to work harder. Can you tell me about something you had to do in this movie that was a first, or maybe something that you had to take to another level, so it demanded you work harder than ever?
Yeah, so what I do, I think it's almost every scene. So what I do is I'm sure you guys, like when you go to an audition and then it comes out completely different than how you intended. You're like, I'm going to say this line right this. And especially early on, it never happened because it's like, the casting director's either not looking up, or there's a phone call, or there's a knock, or, there's always something happening. And so now I rehearse for every movie, and then rehearse it so much so that I could feel like I can improv. So that on the day, if they want to change something, I know it already and know it like I do your home phone number, or the alphabet or something like that. That's the last thing that I want to worry about. And so that I can worry about behavior and telling the story and like, why did the writer write this scene, and you can be talking to the writer and they don't even know, it's just streamline of consciousness. And you're like, I don't know. It just came about. So on every scene, I'm prepared to let the emotion sometimes tell its own story. I don't know if you guys remember the scene where the teacher comes back. They wanted to cut the scene, but man, no, I don't mean to put Amazon under the bus, but I'm like saying, because sometimes scenes are too long and stuff, and they don't know how it's going to play. And there was one thing that I don't remember saying, but like it wasn't in the script, but just seeing all of my teachers and mentors as that person, and I just saying that you changed my life, like that. That just came organically, and so you study the emotion of the scene, and then choose a behavior, and then any line will do.
Such a beautiful scene. I'm glad it is exactly as it is in the finished product. All right, so you, I know, got the opportunity to Zoom a bit with the real Jose before you started filming. Is there anything in your performance that we could see now that came from having that one-on-one time? Something you never would have found in the character unless he was so giving with his time with you?
I'm going to be honest, not a lot. Because when I talked to him, it was the winning version of Jose Hernandez, and so it's almost hard to. It might have been hard for him to remember what it was like when he was struggling, and I still struggle, or just like everybody else, like with self-doubt, right? Like I'm not good enough, and it's a constant thing, and I just have to rehearse and try to focus on other things. And so what I did is I interviewed a bunch of his coworkers, and I was like, how was it with Adele, his wife? And he was like, no, I just asked her out. I was like, cool. Then I went to Adele, and I was like, so how, like, can you explain to me the dating situation? She's like, there was none. He's like, he waited a year to ask me out. I was like, that's real. Okay, I like that way more. And instead of playing this macho dude, like, hey, we should go out, it would be cool and real to play somebody who's not secure about themselves, and say, first he's like, maybe we should hang. You know what? No, I don't know what I'm doing. You're never gonna go out with me. And then she's the one who says, let's do this. I was like, dude, that's kick ass. That's like real. And then so what I did really is I imitated my dad. because me and my mom were kind of the loud. I mean, I'm a mom's boy, but me and my mom were the loud ones in the family, as well as my brother. And my dad was I did this a lot in the movie, but he had whenever he was proud of you or did something, he's like, and he actually would say stuff, say like, say it, boss. No, not that one, not that one. But except you couldn't hear him, so you're like, he does a lot of facial gestures. And I chose that because he was a quiet man who crossed the border in his 20s. He was a semi-pro boxer, really good soccer player, but he couldn't make a living on the fields as a migrant farm worker. And so him and my mom crossed, and they tried to get for a better life in Chicago. And those quiet warriors, like in their quiet moments, I remember just looking at them and seeing the strength, and so that's something that I try to bottle.
Calling him a quiet warrior is making me think of this. What do you find more difficult in general, doing scenes with a lot of dialogue or where everything is coming via a reaction shot? Because you do have a bunch of those types of moments in this movie, and they're very, very powerful and fun to track.
Yeah, I mean, I do this in a script. I don't know if you guys do it, but especially the first time that I read it, I write everything down, everything that I think the characters thinking and feeling and who it reminds them of, and just streamline a consciousness. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And so when there's a reaction shot, it feels just like another scene. Like I'm reading what I wrote and I memorize it, and then I run that in my head. And it's just like doing another scene where there's there's things going on, because I think the audience deserves it for an emotional joyride, as opposed to just looking in and you're like, hi, no, I don't want those shots. To me, I want to fill it up, and then have to tame it down a bit.
I'm a big believer that you could feel the weight of that behind the scenes work that we don't necessarily hear, all that stuff that you wrote down.
Yeah, and also I'm reading stuff about Dustin Hoffman running around the block and getting himself tired and how alive, and this was in the 70s. I think it was for Marathon Man, was it? No, yeah. Doing something crazy, and then when you see it, you're like, you just don't know what's going to happen, because he doesn't know what's going to happen. And so I definitely borrow from those guys.
You've brought up the opportunity to learn your lines and improv a bit, so now that's making me want to know, even though this is based on a true story, is there any particular moment in the film where that unexpected magic popped up and it completely changed a scene, and now we could see that in the finished feature?
Well, what I do now is, because I rehearse so much, if there's an instinct, I write it down, and then I give it to the writer. Because if it keeps popping up, because I'm I have this thing where I'll read a script and I'll read somebody's lines, and I'm like, see how would I react to it? And then if it's very different, I was like, oh, I definitely got to study that. So it elicits a different kind of response. And so that's kind of like improv. But there's some scenes with me and Adella when we're seeing each other, and she says, I gotta go home, and I was like, yeah, you should go, yeah, you should go home. But she's at home, and we just made that up, because I just at that point, it's not very sexy, but we wanted to make a sweet story of of these two people that. And by the way, she's fantastic. She can have chemistry with anybody. Yeah. Seriously. I said, I'm like, if there's a movie about Castaway, because she can have a movie chemistry with a rock, and it's literally her and Wilson, the volleyball, she could do it. She's that charismatic, and it was very easy to do. But there was little moments like that, which Alejandra, I saw it in her other movies, from Mexico, and she loves behavior, which is awesome, because that's the stuff that I like as well.
I'll follow up on both of them. I'll start with Alejandra first. What is something about her past projects and just her general sensibilities as a filmmaker that made you think this is the perfect person to helm this story?
I saw La Niñas Bien, and it was a story about Mexico City, socialites, and how one of them loses money and gets ostracized, and is all of a sudden not part of and she was able to tackle that. And what was the most interesting to me was the behavior of and the little subtle nuances that she was able to highlight in that movie, and how differently people treat you. And they're like, if you're, hey, do you want to go for tea? I'm like, oh, they don't even have a watch, and they're like, I can't. And all of a sudden they don't have time for you, and how bad that feels. And it's like, I love that movie, and I was like, I would love to work with her. And by that time she had the job, so I'm like, it wasn't my say anyway.
What about how she operates as an actor's director? Is there anything she does that makes her stand out from other directors you've worked with that you want to experience more in the future?
Well, what was really nice was going on a set. We shot in Mexico, and there was a Mexican woman that wrote it. There was a Mexican woman directing it. There's a Mexican woman shooting it. And there was a Mexican woman who was the head of props. And there was a Mexican woman for wardrobe. And I thought, wow, this is a nice change of pace, and she definitely set the tone. And it was just, I'm like walking the set, I was like, this is badass.
She does exceptional work here. Now I'll go back to Rosa, who is one of my favorite working actors out there.
Yeah.
She just delivers 110% in every single thing I've seen her in. What is something unique to her as a scene partner? Is there anything she did for you on this set that kind of just blew your mind?
I remember having... I saw a couple of her past projects, and she's a very big personality, like very, very big, super charismatic. And I thought, man, she's being underused. I really did think so. And I just asked her, he's like, yeah, some directors, want me to tone it down. And I was like, no. I was like, you got to go all out. Just be you, and then, bring in what a little edges. And that if you see, like, her performance is so inspired, and it's like she really goes for it, and she doesn't hold back. And I think that, her being herself, like, it was just a joy to watch and have her take over some scenes. I love that.
So good, so consistently impressive. I can't get over it. Whether it's her or anyone in this ensemble, can you name a time on set when a scene partner was giving you just what you needed at the time, where it helped you access something in your own character that you might not have been able to reach without them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the teacher, when she came in and she walked in so gingerly, and she was like that the entire day, and I wouldn't say that it was like method acting or whatever, but like it really did change the scene, because it wasn't supposed to be like that, And then when she showed, it takes her a long time to get the my drawing, and then she puts it up, and they don't cut to her, but she gives me the scene like she was really proud of me, and that's what made me think of, like, you changed my life.
Such a good example. All right, touching on the training briefly before I turn to some audience questions. You mentioned the water up your nose, but can you give us maybe another example of a part of that training that, let's say, one came really naturally to you, you just picked up on it really fast, but another part of it that really took some legwork in order to nail it and make it look authentic on screen?
I mean, there's one scene that was like kind of glossed over a little bit. It's about when he's talking about the beryllium detectors and the laser sensitivity and how it can mess up the readings. It's too much, but like it took me about like a month just to I was like, what is this guy talking about? Because I'm like, and I was like, dude, no one's going to understand this, but I think it's important that he understands it. And so that's why I set it up in 5 different stations, because at first, basically what they're doing is like, there's a channel, right? And the beryllium detector's on it, right? And when the laser hits it, because it's supposed to get destroyed, does it mess up the data? And so like the beryllium, it's supposed to detect the signal, like it's recording both things. And I was like, all right, let me just draw on a piece of paper what these things are. And then it was awesome. She was able, like, she let me set it up on 5 different stations, and I was able to, but I mean, that one, a month for one scene, that's like, that's a long time.
All right, so was that was the thing you had to work on then?
Yeah, that was the thing.
What came really naturally to you?
Not much. Not much.
All right, I'm going to turn to this audience question to build on
Sorry
the training
about that.
part
I'm
of
like
it.
going to NASA and being like,
yeah,
I can do that on the weekends.
Oh, and then
That's
then you leave the movie and you can be an astronaut now, right?
No,
Yeah, I don't
no,
think
but
so.
still,
Not many
I
of
can
us
act
can.
like one, I guess.
Laura wants to know, did you get to do the interview that astronauts have to answer? So did you authentically get to do any of the training elements that they need to do in order to get the opportunity to go to space?
None, zero. But when I was at NASA, like you did go onto this like you tested out like zero gravity, and they you basically have a bunch of harnesses on your knees and your ankles, harness here, and they counterbalance you so that you have to kind of move along with it. It's the coolest thing ever. And if you ever go to NASA, like the inner nerd in you will definitely be stoked.
You get to like fly in a plane or do vomit comet or anything like that?
Vomit comet? No, the fact that I even have to ask probably gives her the answer.
I'm the only crazy person in the world who desperately wants to do that. Rufino wants to know, can you describe the audition process? What was your process, and how many auditions did you do for this role? I assume you did not audition.
I did not audition. I'm sorry, but I did audition a while ago, like a lot, and I did go to a lot of auditions.
I'm gonna Did you see like the light bulb go off in my head?
I'm like, oh man.
I couldn't tell if I distracted you because I have a follow-up question to that. I like asking this every once in a while. Can you give us a past audition high, but then also an audition low, and tell us what you learned from that low that helped you in future auditions?
Oh, I've been fired before for doing like the chapter in the book, and you're like, what is this guy doing? And no, but I actually don't think that there's any failures. Like, for instance, I was too young, but I auditioned for this medical drama, and I didn't know a thing about how to be a doctor, and so I just looked up and studied. I'm like, oh, bedside manner, make sure that you give the patient hope, and then studied it, and I was like, wow, this is not coming easy. So I'm like, I had to study that for a while. Then I went to the audition. I didn't look right for the part, and the casting director said, you did a great job, but and I was like, yeah, I know I'm not right for it. So, but that vibe of being very, full of a lot of care, is how I ended up doing this movie, Crash, with my daughter. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I grew up in sports and stuff, so there was a lot of stuff that you have to tap into your emotions or whatnot, and caring for your daughter while you're telling the story about the impenetrable cloak, the invisible cloak or whatever, and so I used kind of that energy that I found in the audition that I didn't even get a call back on, and so I was like, oh, I guess this game is really just about growing.
All right, I got one more audience question here. I'm combining Johnny and Eloy because you both got at the same idea here. To me, you are one of the most versatile Latino actors working today. How did you manage to break Hollywood stereotypes in your career, and what goes into you deciding what your next project will be?
Well, I'll tell you a horror story. When I started 25 years ago, you guys remember the breakdowns, all right? I tried to audition for some big movies, and I would get the breakdown, and it would say, blah, 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 Caucasian only, blah, 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 Caucasian only. And it wouldn't be until the 12th or 13th that it would be open to other ethnicities. So I'd have to turn a couple pages and be like, sometimes it would be 3 pages, and this one was like, okay, cool. And you had like 5 lines. And so that was, it's weird to not feel wanted in a profession that you really, really love, and it hurt a lot, especially when you're young, and I just kept working towards it. And I'm like, one day I said, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna treat him like a 3-dimensional character, and then that's how Crash came about. Because Crash, I was like, screw it, if I got to play these gangsters, I'm gonna play them like 3-dimensional people. And so that was for me the breakout, and I just want to do stuff that my son would be proud of, that my friends in You know, I grew up in a predominantly Mexican American and African American neighborhood, and I'm still friends with all those guys. It's something that they would be proud of. Also, I remember I did a movie where they were making fun of me, and I was like, it's probably not good to do those. No, I mean, they kept it real. They were very real about it, and they're like, I can't believe you did that one, bro. You know, and they were right. They were right, and it was early on, so I was like. And my mom, she said something before she died that was really poignant and really kind of just special. Is she said, nobody remembers your bank account, you know, so why don't you do good movies? And then she passed away.
So true.
Yeah,
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, no worries.
Before we let you go, I have one more question about your career inspired by the film, because the relationship between Jose and Adella is one of the most beautiful things in this film. Who is your Adella, the person that said to you, like, I take you seriously, I take your dreams seriously when you needed to hear it the most?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, who's my Adella? And I was like, well, that'd be my wife, because I'm married. But you're talking about...
I mean, your wife could still be the answer to the question.
No, but you're saying, but I met her way after. You're saying somebody that believed in me.
When you needed it.
Said, as an artist?
Said, I take your dreams seriously when you needed to hear it.
Yeah, my best friend's mom. My best friend's mom is the one that says, you should be an actor. And I'm like, no, thank you. And then she hit me on the head with like a newspaper. And she's like, you promised me you're going to go to that audition. I was like, what? Because like I said before, nobody's an actor in my neighborhood. And so there was something, I don't know, she just said, you have to go. And so she made me promise her that I was going to go to the audition. I don't even know why. She just had this weird, I don't know, she had a weird vision. And then from when my parents were telling me to come home because I was struggling for over 10 years, I'm like, it's tough to see your kid come back 20 pounds lighter because he's not eating very much. But she's like, you're going to make it, mijo. You're going to make it. Sylvia Torres, that's her name.
Have you kept in touch? Has she seen
Absolutely.
a lot of your work?
She's every premiere, she's there.
It's like the version of the teacher that's beautiful.
Yeah, and she's like this tall and then like always there.
Invaluable support, and I love to hear about it. Michael, huge congratulations on
this
movie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for being here and sharing your process with us. Thank you, guys.